Hello, my name is Mr. Curtis, and this dancing paintbrush is Bruce. Today we're talking about printmaking. Printmaking is a way of making art that artists have been using for centuries upon centuries, long time. And it's a way of making multiple copies of an original piece of art. And you may have been making prints without even knowing it. That's right, Bruce. Even you make prints sometimes. In fact, last week after we were done painting our puppet heads, I asked you to pass me my little notebook, and you did, and this is what it looks like. Yes, guess what color Bruce's puppet was? Green. Yeah. Don't be surprised, Bruce. It's okay. It's only acrylic paint. It'll come right off. So we have a little Bruce handprint there on my notebook. So even a handprint is the most basic form of printmaking. But artists have been using lots of different kinds of materials to make prints and lots of different ways to make prints. Let's look at some examples. Many kinds of printmaking involve drawing or transferring an image to a block of something and then carving away areas so that the lines of that image are raised, and then that image is inked up and then acts like a stamp to transfer the image to the paper. And here you can see a woodblock print by Lind Ward. The block is on the left and the print is on the right. Here's an example of a lino-cut print. That uses a soft material called linoleum, which is usually used for flooring. Here's an example of a stone-cut print. Many artists who live up north and who are Inuit use this style of printmaking. Here is the stone being prepared with ink, and here is the print. Today we won't be carving anything. We're going to be making a print called a collagraph print. That's right, a collagraph print. And what is a collagraph? Well, the colla part of that word comes from collage. And we've done collages already in our composition lessons. So, how is that going to work? Well, let's show you. You ready to do this, Bruce? Yeah, Bruce is always game to try something new. Okay, so Bruce, head on down to your printmaking station. Okay, and down you go. Okay, off Bruce goes, and let's get started. Okay, collagraph print. Here are my supplies. I've got some cardboard, some nice thin cardboard, works really well. Some cereal box cardboard, works great. This is the piece that I'm going to be building my collage on, and it's the same size as my piece of paper. So you'll need a piece of paper and a piece of cardboard that's the same size. And the paper that I'm using is watercolor paper. I find that watercolor paper works really well for this, or a thicker kind of paper, something with a little bit of tooth to it, something that's a little bit sturdier, I find works best. You can try this with regular paper as well. I find it doesn't make quite as good of a print. So, but you know what? You can always experiment. So I'm going to set this aside because I'm going to use that a little bit later. This is going to be my canvas where I'm going to build my image with collage. So what will I use to do that? I've got all my tools here. I've got my scissors for cutting things out. I've got my glue, of course, very important for collage. Glue stick works great. I've also got a glue gun hiding over here. If you have a glue gun, you can use that for things for larger pieces, or if you just want, it works a little bit faster if you use a glue gun. But the regular glue stick works fine as well. And then we've got some string here, or if you have yarn will work just the same way. So this is great for when you want to accentuate lines that you have. I find that the string is a nice soft string, but yarn will do the same thing. It'll soak up the paint and it'll make a nice solid line. So some yarn or string works really well for a collagraph. Gives you some interesting effects. So I'm going to set that aside. Cardboard for cutting out your image, and then for making the print we need some paint. So I've got some acrylic paint here. Usually prints you want to use ink, but inks can be expensive. Printer's ink are quite expensive, but this method, regular acrylic paint, will work well. if you don't have acrylic paint, this is just some inexpensive paint from the dollar store. But if you don't have acrylic paint, watercolor paint might work as well. I've never tried it with watercolor paint. You'd have to use quite a bit, and you'd have to mix it so that's a pretty thick consistency. But you can try it. So you know what? You can always experiment, and please do. So I've just got a few different colors here. I'm keeping it pretty simple. Don't worry about using a lot of different colors, especially for your first collagraph. You want to just keep it pretty simple. So I'm going to set those aside, and then along with those I've got my brushes. I've got a big brush for covering wide areas. I've got a smaller brush. I'm not sure which one I will use yet. I'll probably go with just the smaller brush because I think my image is a bit small for a large brush, but I've got that just in case. I'm going to set those aside, and I've got a rag here just in case for spreading my paints. You can use a rag to do that as well. Paper towel would work. So there's that. Okay, so now let's get started making my image. So the first thing is, a good idea is to get some ideas, start doing some drawing. I have a few different fish here that I was working on, and I think I want to use this fish as my inspiration for my collagraph. You don't have to do a fish, of course. You can do whatever kind of subject matter is appealing to you. You can even make it just abstract. Experiment with just some shapes and textures and see what you can do with collagraph. So I'm going to use this fish as my inspiration, and I'm not going to trace it or anything. I'm just going to use this as my inspiration. I'll put this aside so I can use that. I can just use that as a reference, and then I'm going to cut those shapes out and glue them onto my canvas here. Okay, so I want my fish to take up most of the space here. So I want that fishy part, the body, because I like that big tail. So I want the body to be about that big. And I think I can fit the body on this piece here. So I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to glue that on. Okay, so now I've got my fish, my collage is done. It might be a little hard to see because it's the same color of cardboard on top of cardboard, but once we paint it up and make a print, then you'll see the image, and especially if we use different colors. I've got a few different layers, so that might create some interest, and I've got my piece of string here, so I'm curious to see how that will show up. But first what we're going to do is let this glue dry on here first. So we're going to let the glue dry, and then we'll come back and paint it up. Okay, we're back, and the glue is dry and it's ready for paint. So as long as you can move your hand back and forth like this, pressing down with a little bit of force, and none of that cardboard is moving around on you, then you're good for paint. Well, my string here is a little wibbly wobbly, but that's okay. Okay, I'll just be gentle with putting the paint on there. So instead of, this is going to be a little crazy, because instead of using a palette, what I'm going to do is I'm going to squirt the paint directly onto my cardboard. I'm going to spread it around, and this is the tricky part. You have to work fairly fast because this acrylic paint dries quickly, and you want to make your print before the paint dries. So we'll have to work pretty quickly here. Okay, I'm going to use my little brush here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do blue all the way around the fish, and then I'm going to try some of my metallic blue and a little bit of the pink and metallic blue. So I'm going to do pink for the fish, and then with some metallic blue highlights. We'll see how this turns out. I might be getting a little too ambitious, but I'm going to try it out. Okay, so here we go. Let's give this a whirl. Let's try to make a print. Okay, press it down. And there it is. So when you do a collagraph print, you're always going to have surprises. And a couple of things to keep in mind. Around the edges of the pieces that you glue down, you're going to have a lot of white space in there. So that's why if you use thicker cardboard, that gap is going to be even larger because there'll be that much more space between the paper and your cardboard. So keeping your cardboard thin helps you get the best results. And also I find when you use watercolor paper, like I've done here, then you actually get a nice impression. You can see your brush strokes, which kind of works out sort of nicely here. And we've got a little bit of that shiny blue coming through there, which is nice. So I think that worked out pretty well. That's a pretty successful collagraph print. There you have it, a collagraph print. This might have been something you haven't tried before, making a print using everyday materials, but actually doing it is a little bit tricky. I've found that it took me a few tries before I really caught on to the technique. It's because that paint dries so quickly. You've got to pull that print really fast after you've laid the paint down. But just keep on trying, and what I did is I kept experimenting with different thicknesses of cardboard and different types of paper until I got the results that I like. So art is about experimenting. Being creative is about finding something that piques your interest and then just exploring that thing and seeing what results you get. And so I hope this sparked your creativity and that you've tried it out, and maybe you'll keep on trying it, and hopefully you're having fun. So speaking of having fun, I wonder if Bruce is having fun with his collagraph print. Let's check it out. Oh, hey Bruce, what's going on there? Well, you got some blue paint on your face, I see. How did your collagraph print go? Oh wow. Okay, so Bruce took a creative approach here. He made a self-portrait by putting blue paint on his face and then basically doing a face plant on the paper. And I wouldn't recommend doing this at home, but Bruce is a paintbrush, so he's very experienced in this area. Creative thinking, Bruce. Wow, way to go. So until next time, keep thinking creatively and be kind to yourself.